51 year old young.
Because we're not developing our cognitive and psychological skills to be able to be reasonable human beings without having access to nature. So the point of some of the work is to bring kids into an interactive environment within their schools where they can produce the sounds of the rainforest and things like that by sitting still and not moving. So it's sort of a meditative reverse playground where things happen if you're not moving. And basically building microecologies that are interactive in permanent ways across different parts of the world, whether it be like this, which was a school in LA, or all the way in the mountains of Bhutan for a festival. So essentially it's building, working with natural ecologies from where these places are, but also some ecologies that happen from that exist across the world, and bringing them into relationship with each other through technology, which I won't go too much into in terms of like the biosensorium, which is the larger scope of this project, because we've just got so much more to listen to from all of our other guests here. But essentially, this is obviously here, and what I would like to do is to use the dome structure, the biosensorium, which is a place where I mentioned we have these interactive ecologies, to then be powered by these systems. Because if we're doing interactive ecology based on interactive technology to promote a better biophilic systems infrastructure for our society, then we better do it all the way. So one of the ways that I like to think about doing this is to have a festival here where we have just the basic structure of these domes set up, and we can power them and everything like that from ourselves and from the waste of the local community, the farmer next door, and also any other integrated power sources that we can find that we think are a good idea, building them together. So for the sake of just us together here, I wanted to just mention a little bit more about that. So the idea of the CMEs, the collaborative manufacturing enterprises, are, beyond important. They're vital. But how do we seed them? Municipalities are very difficult to deal with. Energy infrastructure is very difficult to pull apart. And this is truly what you would call a disruptive technology. People love to throw that word around most of the time. It's completely inappropriate, but for this, it is very appropriate, and it is seen as such. So by creating a fair, which is a cultural event that promotes all the things that everybody has specific expertise in. So everyone here has a specific expertise, and everyone here's expertise fits together in a biophilic system. So what are the practical, how is there a singular practical application of all of our expertise that can come together to create basically a cultural event that is in and of itself the seed of infrastructure to promote a culture of eco-citizenry in every area that it goes to. So a networked, think of the World's Fair, which was a centralized event which burgeoned all the innovations of the modern time and left in its wake infrastructure, community, and technology that enabled a more interesting modern world to spring forth. That, but on a distributed level, so that we can create a template, perhaps here, and replicate that across the world, not by everybody going there, but us having a simple format by which people in their local community can replicate the ideas, perform the basic things that make sure that it sits within the idea of a biophilic system, and have collaborators dotted across the world who are responsible for their own communities, building their own things by themselves and sharing their indigenous knowledge, while at the same time is also receiving some of the things that have been worked on for collectively hundreds of years. Thank you. Now we'll see.
The plumbing lesson from Sasha.
Yeah. Plumbing 202.
202.
And then we're going to put on the reducer, because they're going, you can only get this kind of pipe in 16 or 12. and 12 is very thin, and you don't get much pressure down 12. So you want are what I like to call biophilic. So they're not just renewable energy, they're not just clean energy, they're not just green technology, they're biophilic systems, biophilic technology. What's the difference? Well, these systems have at the center of them the being of the biosphere. So if we look at the biosphere as a being, we're talking about nature in a state of nature that includes humanity and all the living things, and everything that is made from a biophilic system is used within the biophilic system. A commodity is different. A commodity extracts something from the earth, uses it, and then it goes back into the earth in the form of pollution. So it's very easy to understand then if we look at a biodigester, a fuel cell, and these kinds of energy systems, the difference between them and let's say a battery. So a battery, you have to mine the material out of the earth, you can use it for a set period of time, and if they're not designed to be recyclable, they will be thrown away and they go back into the earth, into landfill. So that's a commodity, that's not a biophilic system. If you look at any technology and apply the principle, not only is it circular, but does the circle that it work within the ecology of the planet, then it's something that we should use, and we can always use that as a principle for design. So biophilic design as the principle behind which we design and we innovate all the things that we do from now on, because we can't afford not to. We cannot build anything that has planned obsolescence or does not or effectively is a commodity, because we cannot afford it. We end up with all of this trash. Now, the great thing about the fact that we have all of this trash is that we have all of this trash. We have more weight that we have dug up out of the lithosphere than the lithosphere now weighs in material. So when we design things to be refurbishable and recyclable, it means that we can use the materials that we already have. So we design to use the materials that we already have. And amazingly, we're moving now into the time of our world where we have all the information that is ever known, apart from the idiots that burned down Alexandria and who burned the incredible encyclopedia of ancient China. We still have all the rest, and most of that is being synthesized into AI databases, and will then be able to be used by AIs to enhance and help us collaborate on making better and more efficient technologies made out of the shit we have already got. So these are the principles that I want to talk about us making, but that's all very well and good. How do we actually get round to doing it? Apart from Dad sitting in the lab, as you can see, isn't very comfortable for him. He's become the hunchback. And then Yasser, who has come here to visit my dad in this obscure place because it is that obscure what he's doing. This is a very weird situation considering the state of the planet. So what's the problem? Why is this not being embraced more ubiquitously, and what can we do about it? What we can do about it is again turn to nature for what we become motivated by. What we are motivated by is a sense of awe. We love awe. Anything that makes us look up and go will have us catalyzed into doing something amazing. And if you don't believe me, you can just look up in the sky tonight and you'll see a little blipping thing. They're going deep, deep, and that is, if you're lucky, the International Space Station and not some other space junk. But if it is the International Space Station, what the International Space Station is a massive collaborative effort in the most hostile place, which is space. You cannot get more difficult environment than where there is no environment. There's no environment in space, it's a vacuum, and yet somehow all of the different countries across the world can somehow collaborate to make somehow a zero-emission, silent, modular, habitable unit as an activity that we do without having. We don't shoot each other in the face in the space station. We collaborate. So if we can do it in space, then we can do it here. The reason why we do it in space is because we think space is awesome. So what do we have to do? We have to make things here awesome. So that's what I try to do with my work. I'll just play this video in the background.
Yeah, we can build some drainage.
Lesson in how we got to where we are with our fuel cell. So I'm going to start in the beginning. This is the original Mark I Elenco fuel cell, which became the Zetec fuel cell. And it was very clever for its time, 30 years ago. It had what is called a gas diffusion layer, which is this white layer where the gas would go through, but liquid wouldn't go through the other way. So it was aquaphobic. The catalyst was impregnated into a nickel screen, which was the conductor. And the power was taken out on these tabs, which the tabs that connect to this. The problem with this is it had to be encased in a large frame with all the engineering on that frame. So the amount of actual space was relatively small. The second problem was it was difficult to manufacture. And the third problem was it leaked. And that's a big problem with alkaline fuel cells. Alkaline fuel cells use a liquid electrolyte, which is potassium hydroxide, which anybody who knows anything about chemistry, you don't want potassium hydroxide on you. It's nasty stuff and it burns. One of the good things about potassium hydroxide, nobody ever steals these, because you can find out who stole them by visiting your nearest hospital and finding somebody screaming in agony. Okay, so that's a really good way of dealing with it. So these went off to be manufactured in Israel after the collapse of Zetec, and they still do that to this day. But of course now, despite them being exactly the same, they are now the most advanced technology known to man. Propaganda is really useful sometimes. Anyway, so what we decided to do was to make something that was cheaper and easier to manufacture, and we came up with this design. And it's pretty much the same thing, although the gas diffusion layer isn't the same color. But the good thing about this was it was made of rubber. So it was completely bomb-proof. And it fitted into a manifold like that. And we had the three parts to it, which were an anode, a cathode, and a bipolar plate, all fitting into this manifold. So that was really cool. That was the first time that had ever been done. And it was made of rubber, so it was indestructible. It was injection molded, and it worked reasonably well, but as you can see, it's huge. So it has limitations in the application. So we took the basic concept of this, which was to have a fully integrated system. This also leaked, by the way, and apply it to 3D printing. And what we came up with was this. And this is very nice and very elegant, but of course 3D printing this would be a fortune. It costs a great deal of money, and that's fully integrated. I won't go into it because it's proprietary, but it was one piece. We started with this. This was the first one, and then we refined it into being this, which had its the parts that connected it together integrated. But in this, you have the liquid electrolyte flowing from top to bottom. You have the gas flowing over the top on either side. So it's really simple. So I looked at this and said, well, we can't possibly manufacture that because it would cost too much money. So we did this. Now this isn't single, this is actually made up of 4 parts, and I'll show you that on another bit. And this was a big improvement, and the electrolyte we made flow from this side to this side, and the gases from this side to that side. With anode on one side, cathode on the other. And it came in 4 bits, which meant that we could manufacture 3D printing lots of these because it didn't take up very much space. So you could print up, we were printing something like 400 pieces in one shot. So it was very cheap. So this is what it looked like at the end, with an anode on one side and a cathode on the other side. And what we did is, all the architecture we changed so that all the engineering was actually on the actual cell, and that's not done by anybody else, that's us. And that's how it starts out. That is that outside dark stuff is a gas diffusion layer, the same as this. The only difference is this is conductive and that isn't conductive. And we start out with this, which is nickel foam. And we press that into that shape, and that we can, with our one roller here, we can produce 5.5 kilometers of this per day. So it's incredibly cheap and easy to do. So in the end, this is the final version. The plastic this is made out of, you could use, I don't know, 50 times before you'd have to, 50 times as it is, before you would have to start adding new plastic to it to make it to make it better. So that's it. That's where we are. The cost of these, the material costs are about 300 euros per kilowatt, and the manufactured cost total now at the moment is about $800 per kilowatt. That compared with $1,400 per kilowatt for the nearest rival technology. But the difference between the nearest rival technology and this technology is we don't know how long this will last, but we tested it for 20,000 hours and there was no change in it, so we gave up because it was getting boring. But we reckon it's got a lifetime probably of about 10 to 12 years. Now, during that time, you're going to make advances in this. So when it gets to the point where you've advanced the technology by 10% of its efficiency, then it's worthwhile taking all these back and remanufacturing them as the new technology. And because the materials are 95% recyclable, the only bits that aren't recyclable really is some carbon. Not all the carbon, but some of the carbon. And probably in time you can even recycle that. So the idea is to be able to produce stuff where you actually have a bank of materials. So when these are made and put into service, you effectively have a bank of that material. That becomes the material that you're going to use and use and use and use and use again. And eventually you'll come to the point where the amount of material you have is so great that it influences the cost of the materials, in the sense like nickel, for instance. Nickel producers at the moment have quite a good time because they're used in batteries. That material is used in batteries, so they can charge whatever they want. But when we get to the point where this becomes a bank, then we can turn around to the nickel producers and say, hey, here's the deal. You either reduce the price or we dump and put you out of business. So that's the economic, the way the economics work. Essentially, what this has done, the whole purpose of this is to be able to make these very, very simply with three people minimum, a maximum of 3 million people to start. 3 million, maximum of 3 people to start. A CME, that's a collaborative manufacturing enterprise. We provide the technology and the training and the expertise, which we don't charge for. It's completely free. And we take an equity stake in order to protect the technology and in order also to be able to have funds when the CME is profitable, to be able to progress the research and development, which we do a lot with universities with. So that really is the simple story of the history of the fuel cell. But it's taken me 25 years to do this, so it hasn't been a trivial exercise.
So far,
I was
I
a
mean,
young,
one of the
vibrant
most
man.
inspiring books that I read recently, last year, was Rob Hopkins' book, and it's called From What Is to What If, right? It's really inspired me a lot. And it talks about the power of imagination and to imagine like a different world by asking what if questions. So after what we heard, what would be one what if question that comes to your mind? Anyone? What if? What if we had
Modular energy production.
modular energy production?
What if we had independent communities that could just like produce their own power anytime?
Great.
Yes.
What if? What was that?
Thank you. So the thing is, after the next explanation of the anaerobic digestion system, I would love to speak about gasification. Before doing that, I would love to explain the thermochemical process technologies that exists. The first one is we have like 3 different processes. We have pyrolysis, we have gasification, and we have combustion. So, what is the difference between the 3? Combustion is what human beings were doing from the start of time. You just need a biomass and air to combust anything and to produce mostly CO2 that will go to the atmosphere and then hurt the planet. So what other options does we have? We have pyrolysis and gasification. For the pyrolysis, we just heat any different biomass to a certain temperature without using of any oxidant, which means we just heat a biomass in an inert atmosphere without having any other gases that will have some reactions with. And the third option is by the gasification. The gasification is what we will concentrate on because first, because combustion, as we said, will have some serious damage on the atmosphere, and for the pyrolysis, the results we will get from gasification are more important. So what I will explain you about gasification. The main, I will give you some chemical reactions. So the main products on gasifications are the hydrogen. For the gases are hydrogen, CO, CO2, and CH4. So as Nick explains before, we can separate CO2 so that we can use for the plants. So we will have CH4, CO, and H2 left. We can convert by reformation. We can convert CO and CH4 to using the water shift process to more hydrogen that we can use on fuel cells. So to explain the process, mainly we have different parameters in gasification. So we take biomass, we put it in a gasifier, we heat it up to a certain temperature, and then we introduce vapor water, because our main objective is to produce hydrogen. We can also use the air as an oxidant. So I will give you an example. If you use water, we will have mainly hydrogen plus H2, and if you use the air, we will have CO2, and we will have also, if you want, you will have CO. It depends on the quantities of air that we introduce on each biomass. But when talking about the Nick system, he wants to combine the two different systems, anaerobic digestion along with gasifier, then related to a fuel cell. So as I said, we will, with the gasification, we can produce the H2 by gasifying the digested coming from the anaerobic digester. And so we have the digested as an entrant, so we have digester as an entrant in our gasifier.
And
So
who of you would pay 10 euros to get 1 euro out in food worth?
no one,
No.
that's for sure.
Oh, really? It's just a joke.
Every day, isn't it?
So this is something I would like to start with, because the relativity or the relation between the energy we have to put into our food production nowadays with modern agriculture to what we actually get out of it is 10 calories of energy to 1 calorie of food worth. And the reason why this is the case, and I mean, no people with no man with a common sense would agree to invest 10 euros over a time of, you know, maybe 10 years or longer and get 1 euro out of it. It's not it's not a good investment. So the reason why this is the case nowadays is because the modern agriculture is based on fossil fuels, and we use fossil fuels basically for everything. Like in this 10 calories here, we have things like fuel for tractors, we have things like herbicides and pesticides and fungicides and other toxic sites that are based on fossil fuels. And we also got things like fertilizers, chemical fertilizers like NPK fertilizer. And we got all the machinery we need. And what do we get? We get 1 calorie of basically almost toxic food.
Yeah.
And this is a situation we really can't, you know, cope anymore. What we also get from 1 calorie of food is depleted soils and degrading biodiversity. So all the big cultures of the earth that have
What
lived
kind of biotope it exists
where?
on this planet?
Amazon?
Amazon is a biotope? Okay, let's not go that far. What kind of biotope exists in Dordogne?
Temperate?
In Dordogne?
Temperate?
Temperate? It's a temperate is it's a bio
Biome?
it's a biome. It's not a biotope.
Can you define biotope for us?
Forest?
Huh?
It's a habitat for
define
communities.
What
What is what is biotope?
We are going to the basics.
What is biotope?
It's a living room for a certain amount of species.
Habitat.
Yeah, it's a habitat.
Yeah. Habitat.
Set of processes. sad but explosive. Really grateful to get to know all of you, your amazing family, and this amazing community, temporary community that I am really hoping that will expand with everything that we discussed today. And I would love to acknowledge, before I start, this land with all the absolutely wonderful beings who have been here present since times, ancient times, who are present here now and who are going to enter here today, and kind of to continue from this really, really hard question that Yasser was asking is, you know, what do we do when we've got just like one of each left? I think I totally agree with you guys who are saying we need to create habitats. We need to give space to wilderness. We need to give space to the forest, to the rivers, to the mountains, and basically let nature do her magic, because I think she is magical, and we just need to really learn to trust her, because I think we kind of lost a bit of trust in ourselves and in the magic of nature. So, and I would love to acknowledge these two beautiful Tilia linden trees. I recently learned that they are eternal. I was in a Polish forest of Biophilica, ancient forest, primeval forest. I really advise you to go there whenever you can. There's some, it's problematic space right now on the Polish side. It exists both Belarusian and Polish side. But basically, as I was walking in a strict protected area, somebody showed me one of these trees, and she was like broken, but then another tree was growing. So this tree, there's several trees that really can regrow, and they can regrow continuously. Tilia, and maybe some other trees. So I think for me, these two trees, they're like guardians of this part of, and maybe even guardians of the house. So I really feel it. So today I'm going to share with you a bit of a journey, a bit of a story of Eternal Forest, how I arrived to start this project, why I'm doing it, and how I feel it can benefit or it can contribute to, to making our planet more beautiful, green, and actually let us continue life and listen to the people. So this is just one example of how Portugal looks. This is Monchique. This is another area where I'm developing one of the sanctuaries. And what you see is you stand on the mountain and there's ocean there, and all of this in between, this is basically mountains that are recreated as monocultures. So forests that have been taken out and eucalyptus plantations, they go in. So the journey kind of started there. I wanted to understand what is behind people's thinking and what's the motivation that makes them do that when actually fire comes right on their doorstep, and they lose properties, they lose livelihoods, they lose lives, but they still keep doing that, like right next to where they live. So I started coming up with kind of bunch of questions that were bothering me. As an artist, I ask how artists and art can contribute to deepening our relationship with nature, how art can actually activate and bring communities together. And I did not I wasn't there at the beginning, but I arrived to that question later. I've been working with time a lot, trying to understand how our perception of time and our construct of like partitioned and linear time affects our relationship with ourselves, with nature, and the whole dynamics. Because I believe that we completely lost sense of cyclical time, but also a sensation that time is actually non-linear. And how shifting that perception with time based on working with forests can actually let us imagine what the future can be. And so how we can collaborate with forests. So I don't believe we should like just go and plant things out there. I think we should listen to land and what she has to say, what plants have to say, what animals have to say.
There's a French recording already available.
So as I said, I started.
Yeah, so next time when we are here in 1 year, my hope is that maybe we could do like a performance of it with everyone, not just me. because it's actually written in a way that's supposed to be recited together. And also my dream is that it's like people can actually take it and do something else with it, like in their own communities, maybe even put music to it. I don't know. Yeah, something that happens just like spontaneously. So anyway, I wrote this. That is you. That is within. That is around. That has no name. That is its own mother. The forest that dreams. Let it dream. A seed of a tree always stands to the forest. The forest that trusts. Among beings, human heart, sun for the seed of sacred forest.